Hi, I'm Matthew Sadler.
And I'm WIM Natasha Regan. Today we're looking at an absolutely amazing game from the TCEC Top of the Top tournament. The game is a Reti opening, and Stockfish is white and AllieStein black. And Stockfish plays a kind of setup that has also been tried by lots of top players such as Aronian and So. And we follow actually a long time the game Matlikov against Bok, where black takes quite a hot pawn on the queenside on b2. In this game, AllieStein follows it up with a novelty by taking even a second pawn, and it looks incredibly risky. AllieStein has read it out, and it involves a positional sacrifice of the queen in order for black to get 3 connected pass pawns on the queen side. And Stockfish counters by going all in on the king side and attacking there, and AllieStein just ignores it and pushes these queenside pawns, and we get the most amazing position where black has pawns on a3, b2 and c3, and is tying down white's major pieces, which are trying to stop it from queening. And so there's a material imbalance throughout this game, and actually it turns into a draw by perpetual check.
Yeah, it's a really, truly superhuman, amazing game. So let's have a look at it. I can't wait. I've really enjoyed looking at this one, though I can't really say that I'm 100% sure quite what's happening. This was the opening, the critical position in actual fact. Let's go back and see how this arose. So the game started 1g3. That was the TCEC book. They were using, I think it's called the minimalist opening book for this tournament, which is normally just one ply, and then you let the engines do their stuff. Tends to produce maybe more draws than the super final, where the openings are quite unbalanced, but it leads to some very interesting games. And well, we'll have a look at a few games from this tournament, because there's some quite interesting things for theory. So
yeah, and the tournament was won in the end by AllieStein on tiebreak.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So Stockfish, fresh from its super final win against Leela, didn't actually manage to win, and I think it was going towards the bottom, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 3rd out of 4 with so it was AllieStein and Leela with 3 wins each, and then Stockfish and Stoofvlees with 3 losses. So yeah, quite surprising. I think it just shows just how close the engines are. I think when the engines are so close in strength, you can get results like that. So it's yeah, but strange to see. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a tournament where Stockfish has been at the bottom. So knight f3, c5, bishop g2, knight f6. So what black is doing here is so white's avoided taking the centre right in the opening, and black's just responded by taking it, and it's quite a sensible sort of idea, because often white plays moves like g3, bishop g2, knight f3, and then afterwards, if black plays passively, takes control of the centre, plays d4 and c4. And what you end up in is a Catalan, but where black has lost a lot of early options to sharpen up the game. So this is really the most principled approach from black. White doesn't take the centre, black takes it. But it leads now to quite a sharp position, because white now plays d4. And because black's played c5 very early, black gets the chance to go c takes d4, knight takes d4 and e5. So black's wasting a tempo with e6 to e5, but on the other hand, black's black's gaining the centre, and
white has to move that knight around a bit.
And white has to move that knight around a little bit as well. So knight f3, knight c6, and now white plays c4, attacking the black centre. But because black's removed that that pawn on d4, black now gets the chance to set up a pawn on d4. e3 from white, bishop e7, takes and takes. And this is the introduction to a line that's been played quite a lot by white players. just as a way of slightly avoiding mainline theory, but still getting a very interesting and an unbalanced game. It's like a sort of reverse Monbinoni type position. The only strange thing is that there's no white pawn on d3, and normally in the reverse Benoni, black's got a pawn on e6 here. So who does this favour? Difficult to say. It swings and roundabouts. Without a pawn on e6, black's light square bishop is free, so plenty of activity there. Good squares on f5 or g4, as we'll see in the game. This d pawn is, you could say it's weak, it's isolated. On the other hand, it can also advance, which you wouldn't normally be able to do, to d4 to d3, and will give black some powerful outposts on e2 especially. I think one thing, because there's no e pawn, white's, well, the e file is open, and white's probably going to be fastest to use that. Play rook e1 and put some pressure on there. And white's also got this nice queenside majority, which you can try to advance with a3 and b4. It's
looking at it now, you wouldn't think this game ends up with black having 3 connected pass pawns on the queen side.
No. I mean, that is a very good point. You just could not imagine, how this happened. Yeah, if you showed me the final position, I'd guess maybe I don't know, a Notabome or something like that, semi-Slav, but not a Reti. So how does white play? Well, this is Stockfish, obviously on its own, since move 1, but sort of going along pretty well-established theory. Castles and knight e5. This is a very common idea also in the reverse modern Benoni. This knight on f3, blocks the bishop on g2, and this knight on c6 also blocks the bishop on g2. When you take these two away, then this bishop has got a lovely point attacking the pawn on b7, and of course with the bishop on this diagonal as well. The bishop on f4 and the bishop on g2, they point very nicely against the queen side, give a lot of pressure. And once knight is removed, black might have a problem developing the bishop on c8. So black's normal move, and that's the move that Andy played as well, is to play queen b6. Defends the knight on c6 and attacks the pawn on b2. So it makes white worry about that. Now, the most popular move has been queen b3, which has been played quite a bit. I think they were playing knight a5 in this position. Maybe, I'm not quite sure straight away, but playing this type of position and, then trying to hit the pawn on c4. Also maybe try and hit these two pieces, which are a little bit exposed. For example, I think if knight d2, knight h5, I think I'm remembering that right. And, the bishop's not going to be able to move, so black's going to get the two bishops. Seems to be about, dynamically equal, but quite interesting. But there is another possibility, slightly less played, but also very interesting, which is to play rook e1. So not worrying at all about that pawn on b2, and just, making use of white's e-file. White's threatening to play knight takes c6, and then rook e7, picking up a piece now. So this position has been played a reasonable amount, and black's normal move is to play bishop e6. There have only been a couple of brave souls who've taken white on, but Allie now becomes one of them, because Allie took on b2. So obviously it's a counterattack. If you play knight takes c6 and take the bishop, then we can take the rook. So white simply plays the move knight d2. And here black's got his pawn, but you've now got to find a little bit of a solution to this whole problem of knight takes c6 and rook takes c7. And of course, all white's pieces are active here. I mean, the rook's coming to b1 as well. Big pressure against the queen side. It sort of feels unlikely that black's going to, emerge at the end of it all with an extra pawn. It's black's really got to try and find a good way to neutralise white's pressure. So Allie took on here, which was also, we're also following the stem games here. And here Stockfish played a very important move, the best one, the game the move that Matlikov played against Benjamin Bock, and that was rook b1. The problem with bishop e5, which looks obvious, is this move bishop b4 with an annoying pin on the knight on d2. And if you go rook e2, then black's got bishop g4. And I think another pin. I think a game of Sargsyan, a very strong Armenian player, went f3, bishop f5, and what did he play? Knight b3, queen a3, but black was doing great. You know, it was this isn't dangerous at all. Bishop f6, gf6, queen d4, king g7, and actually only white's in trouble. I mean, the bishop on g2 is awful. Having you know, with white having been forced to play f3. So, but rook b1 avoids this and forces black to make a little decision here. And this is where our paths diverge, because Benjamin Bock played queen a3 and got hit by a rather unusual tactic. White played bishop takes e5, bishop g4. You know, this very typical move. We're seeing it again and again and again. Get the bishop out with tempo, attack the queen, and try and force white to play f3, blocking in the bishop when there's no longer any pressure against the queen side. But the position of the queen on a3 gives white an unusual tactic, which is to take, and then bishop e7 with tempo. And here Benjamin Bock played rook e8, which didn't turn out very well. But queen a2, I think, is the most normal move. Then we take the rook, bishop a4, bishop b4, and we end up with rook and two pieces for queen and two pawns. But obviously, you know, back rank is weak, this pawn is weak. Black's not going to be able to hang on to all the pawns. You know, I think white's got a clear advantage here. So yeah, this was very convincing indeed for black in that game. But Allie played queen a2. Incredibly risky move. Yeah, incredibly risky move. But well, already you know, the neural nets, they were all showing the same idea that cropped up in the game. So they'd obviously decided this was reasonable compensation. I'm not 100% sure, but it's certainly worth seeing. So rook a1, bishop g4. You can throw this in at various places. It's quite a decent time to do it now. Attacking the queen. Obviously rook a2, bishop d1 is going to be fine for black and for white as well. I mean, you play something like bishop e5, you take the pawn on b7. You end up taking both pawns back, but you know, then it's just material equality. So white played f3 and now queen b2. And here Stockfish played rook takes c5. I was vaguely wondering, you know, bearing in mind what happened in the game, whether white could play f takes g4, you know, reopen the line of this bishop, and of course, you know, there's still this unpleasant little set of pieces on the e file here. So I thought, you know, you might be able to get some sort of good play. For example, knight g6, maybe g5, you know, and I've got rook b1 takes b7, maybe just get activity. But in actual fact, I found an unusual line that the engines also ended up liking, which was just knight e4 takes and d3. And, well, black's threatening either queen b6 or queen d4 check. So knight d3, knight b3 is probably sort of forced. And then black plays rook e8. And, yeah, I mean, rook takes e8, rook takes e8. You know, this is pretty worrying, really, for white. It looked to be about balance, basically, but quite good fun. I mean, one of the funny tricks is that it happens in various guises. To show you that is you can go queen f4, and if gf4, there's knight f2 check. A very nice little fork there. But Stockfish played the very best move, which was rook e5, attacking the bishop on e7. Bishop on g4 is hanging, so bishop e6, and now this idea: rook b5, queen c3, rook b3. Ouch! And the queen is trapped.
When we were watching this, I think you said in advance there's going to be a queen sacrifice.
Yes,
so
that's right.
You realised at the time it wasn't just Allie blundering the queen, but it was actually a deliberate ploy.
Yes, no, it's. I mean, at this stage, I mean, Stockfish was at 1.97. It really, you know, it wasn't. It wanted to deviate, you know, all the time, many moves before. But the neural nets, Allie and also Leela, there are, you know, Allie was at 0.54. I think Leela was even 0.4 something, and all based around, you know, the type of position that arose in the game. So it's, you know, they clearly thought that this was pretty decent.
Do you still prefer to play it for white, do you think?
Oh, good Lord. I don't know. I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, I do think if anyone's going to be better, it is going to be white in the end. I mean, material does count for a lot in chess, but frankly, I could only imagine losing it with both colours. To be honest, I couldn't imagine winning it with either colour. That's
worse for both colours.
Worse for both colours. So yeah, it's really really tough. I mean, actually, I mean, I think Leela was looking at playing something like Rook D8 here. Which was a very calm move, which did decently in my engine matches, scored some draws. But Allie's solution was much more radical, and that was to play B5. So, again...
These moves aren't obvious.
These moves aren't obvious, no. I mean, the idea is, of course, if white wastes time taking the pawn, then the queen gets free. You can play D4 to D3, for example, if white plays Rook B5. Yeah. And the idea is simply that after Rook C3, D takes C3, we're going to be playing B4, and then we're going to be getting A5, A4. That's right.
See how they arise.
So what Stockfish did, I mean, there are various ways which I looked at again. Let's have a look. What variations did we have? Bishop E5 was one. B4 takes. Knight B3, Bishop C4, Rook D8. Oh yeah, this was played quite a lot in my engine games. This type of position, when in actual fact, Black's got 3 pawns for the piece. The pawns are solid, and Black was drawing this without any problems whatsoever in my engine games. So yeah, I mean that's so what Stockfish decides to do is decides to keep the position as it is for the moment. The queen's not going anywhere for the moment. And try and get as much improvement in its position before taking the queen. In particular, it tries to do something with this bishop on g2 because you can see how important this bishop g4 idea has been. If that diagonal was still open, well, b5 would lose the exchange, of course. But you also notice, how many dark squares have been weakened, as well as the bishop on g2 being blocked in. So very important idea, bishop g4. And so Stockfish played bishop f1, actually trying to make sure that his bishop gets active. Rook d8, and now queen b1, still keeping the pressure and getting out of a potential pin on the d-file. Allie played a5, and now Stockfish decided it was time to take the queen. Takes, knight e4, and b4. So, what is this position? Rook and 2 pawns for the queen. But well, when you look at the pawns that Black's got, yeah, a5, b4, c3, they're pretty good. Although you're not 100% sure that they're really going to advance. I think the key thing really that that Black has in this position is that its king seems to be extremely safe, and of course with the material advantage, especially a queen. That's the sort of thing that that can make all the difference. If white could generate some kingside counterplay to really distract the black pieces, but it doesn't look obvious at all how to do it. Well, it certainly isn't obvious, but Stockfish does find a way. I mean, there are all sorts of ways that white could play here. I mean, white could just try and do something against the queenside pawns directly, which, to be honest, would be, I think, probably the way I'd end up playing it in a game. For example, bishop c7 is possible, forking the rook on d8 and the pawn on a5. And Black was playing knight takes c4, queen e4, b3. This was one variation. Again, very typical. You're just a queen for bishop down, but these monster pawns are rolling. And rook a4, c2. Yeah, that's right. And rook d1 is going to come in next. It just ends up being. I think this one's winning for white, for Black rather. So that's one idea. Knight takes c3 is quite sensible as well. Check, b takes c3, bishop e5. You just pick up this pawn. But these positions are actually just turned out to be balanced in my engine games. Black's king is quite safe. This pawn can is always tying down a white major piece, which then can't attack the black king side. And Black just seems to hold this without too many problems. But what Stockfish did was amazing. Really incredible tactical vision. Bishop d3, a4 and knight g5. So threatening bishop h7, which is quite difficult to deal with properly, and most importantly, threatening knight takes e6. Taking the light squared bishop and then weakening lots of light squares on the king side. So, but Allie just decided to completely ignore it and played b3. Takes king h8, knight takes c6, f takes c6. And we've just reached this crazy position where the pawns really have advanced very, very far. But white has made quite a few inroads on the king side. So, yeah, who knows who's gained more from this? Now, I mean, the interesting thing about it as well is that these queenside pawns are very dangerous, but they're not going to be able to queen on their own because they're faced by a rook, a queen, and a bishop. But bizarrely enough, as you'll see, the whole aim of black's play is to basically take this one out of operation completely, and then just carry on playing as if as if there was nothing happening. You're on the rest of the board. You're just you're just playing with a queen less virtually. But okay, just play like that. Reminded me very much, actually. Always talk with it from time to time, but very much shogi feeling of having pieces in reserve, and just being able to drop them on. And, shutting out the rook, sort of acts like this. The rook's there, but it isn't there, really. So here white's got... Yeah.
Yeah, and white's got to try and extract itself from all these pawns. But it's amazing how long the blockade lasts, and that
yes, no, it's
that it seems like black doesn't have to rush.
Exactly, and black plays lots of slow strengthening moves, which is just incredible. It's so what can white do here? Well, white's got a couple of alternatives. Bishop c2 was played in the game. We'll have a look at that mostly. Bishop g6 was also played by my engines. The idea being to set up a slightly different blockade. Instead of having the bishop c2 and queen b1 blockading the pawns, white aims for something like this. a3, there we are, we've got our setup. Queen c2. And the idea is simply that the queen is threatening to take on c3 very quickly, and the bishop is restricting the black king a little bit. How is this continuing? Bishop c5, king h1, bishop d4. I'll just show you one of my engine games just to give some nice insight into some of the ideas. King g2 now that the d file is blocked, so there's no worries about a rook giving a nasty check. e5, very typical idea, and e4. A very typical idea there. If you play move, essentially white never wants to swap off his light squared bishop. That's clear because that means that he's no longer able to cover the b1 square. I mean, you notice that the rook on a2, the reason it's so bad is that, well, not only is it blocked, but it's also not stopping b2 to b1. So West will be very careful about that.
And if b2, b1 ever happens, that it's attacking that rook.
It's attacking that rook as well, exactly. There's one very interesting thing here that bishop f6 was the main line, takes and queen e4. And it leads to a typical position where you really feel that the black's king, completely bereft of any light square cover, is going to be in very big danger. But because black's got this bishop on f6, which covers dark squares, white always seems to manage to find a way to escape. And well, here, what do we get in this engine game? Rook b8, threatening b1. Queen f5, very cunning little move. If b1, we give a queen check discovered, and then we can take the queen. So black plays rook d2 check, king h3, c2, covering that. Got to watch out, by the way, because now that this bishop's moved to f6 and the rook to b8, this rook could get free at some moment. And there were quite a few engine games where some drive, you managed to drive the king away somewhere to the centre, and then this rook springs into action. But this didn't actually happen in this game. Check. Queen h8, check, king e7, the queen's attacked, has to take that one, and now we queen. And, well, queen f1 check is quite a big threat here as well, so the white king is not very safe. So in this engine game, the result was just a draw by perpetual. So you can see this gives, I think, a little bit of an idea of one theme, which is this the way that black can defend himself against this light square pressure from white. So in the game, Stockfish didn't do bishop g6; it played bishop c2, and now this move b2. Important to point out that rook takes a4 is possible here. But then we take, and we go rook a8, bishop c2, rook a1. And this is pretty good for black, or pretty good, it's just equal. Black's got a nice plan of play.
Queen trap.
Another queen trap, that's right.
Another queen.
This knight can come round to d7, c5, b3, d2. That's quite a long-term plan, but it seems to work quite fine. You end up with opposite coloured bishops at some stage. So Stockfish didn't want to do that. It just played rook a2. And then a3, and we get this blocking in position. I mean, white's got all sorts of ways of doing stuff. I mean, basically all based around trying to get some sort of kingside attack going, and that means it's queen. How is black going to approach this position? Loads of ideas. I mean, I think the first thing to point out is that if this bishop on c2 ever gets exchanged, then b1 to b1 queen will be almost impossible to stop. So actually black is willing to give up an awful lot of material for that, and we see a line in some of the variations later where black gives up a rook and knight just for this bishop. There's a queen down, but white can't stop black from playing b2 to b1, which is then actually winning for black. So that's one thing. How are you going to get at this bishop? Well, rook somewhere is obvious. Rook d2 would be great. Also, a line out rook d1 to c1 would be very nice as well. So obviously, exchanging off this dark squared bishop, this will always be something that black wants to do in this position, because it gives him access to the dark squares which attack the bishop on c2. There's also other ideas for black. We'll see there's rook d2, even as sacrifices that we'll see. Sometimes combined with rook c8 takes c4. After the rook is on c4, rook d2, bishop d2, c takes d2. The bishop on c2 will be attacked then. And there's loads of ideas of doubling on the d file and just coming in either to d2 or even to d1 as a sacrifice. Loads and loads of ideas. So white played g4 in this position, which is an interesting idea, actually, also trying maybe to play g5 and chase away the knight from f6. I've looked at all sorts of things. Let me just give you one main variation that's also interesting. Queen e1 is a very logical move. Attacking the pawn on c3, also the pawn on c6, getting closer to the black king. And when you play g4, you might have a queen h4 check later as well. So it's a good, all-round multi-purpose move. What I do have to point out in terms of drawbacks is that once the queen leaves b1, if black doubles up the rooks and plays rook d1, then that will actually force the pawn to queen, because bishop takes d1 allows b1 queen. So it's an attacking move, but it means that the defensive structure on the queen side is less solid. Now let's have a look how it went in some of my engine games. Bishop b4, g4, e5 was played. Always always a key idea, this move. Just trying to hit this bishop and inconvenience it. Now, what can white do here? White can take it. It's worth pointing out a couple of these variations. Bishop e5, we go rook d2. That's the key point of it. The bishop's no longer covering d2, so the rook can get in. Bishop f6, rook takes c2. All sorts of threats now. Rook c1, anything. So white's got a perpetual here with check and queen e5, and that's just a draw. But again, e5, you'll see it come all over the place. I mean, why is e5 good? It attacks the bishop on f4, but it also, kind of stops the queen getting to e6 in one go, so it makes the king safer on the light squares. Queen takes e5 is possible as well, but now we've got this rook d1 check idea. Very typical, we see it all over the place. Bishop d1, we get b1 queen, and you're attacking the rook, attacking the bishop. Very difficult for white. So king f2, rook e8, queen f5, rook c1. Again, making use of this pawn. Bishop c1 would allow you to queen, and you're just threatening rook takes c2. You're just going to get rid of that bishop. Bishop d3, rook d8, trying to get rid of it again. Rook d3, g takes f6, rook f1 check. All these tactics. King f1 allows b1 queen. King g2, rook g1 check. And king f2, b1 queen. And well, the craziness continues. Rook g7. This was a draw by perpetual after this in this way. But again, you know, a lot of very typical tactics in this line. You know, just the rook d1 check, diverting the bishop, then rook going to c1, and chasing the bishop, and not worrying about material at all. You know, it's. But I mean, of course, you know, it's when you see the engines doing this, it's you know, you sort of say, oh yeah, and that one's a draw. But I mean, to calculate this during the game, my goodness. What's this line? Bishop g5, e4. Bishop f6 is very similar to what we see in our main game. F takes c4. I wanted to show you this variation. We can go. Oh yeah, rook d2. That's one of the key ideas. Bishop d2, c takes d2, and black's only got a knight for the queen, but of course all the pieces are well, very, very tied up, and the queen can't leave the back rank, because otherwise we'll get a b1 bishop takes d1 queen, or d1 bishop takes b1 queen. So queen d1, rook d8, king g2, knight takes g4, threatening knight e3, queen g4, and then d1 queen check, and b1 queen. And this position here seemed to be just about equal. I mean, even if black ever loses this bishop, this a pawn is a monster, so you'll be queening anyway. Quite amazing how, you know, just how free you can be with material. This rook d2 idea I hadn't spotted at all. It was, I think it was, yeah, it was probably Stockfish who was playing it, wanted to play it all the time. I mean, I couldn't actually conceive of being, you know, a queen for a knight down and still having, you know, masses of compensation here. Especially with you know, with a black king open and a light squared bishop, but it, you know, it just seems to hang together. So Stockfish in our game played the very logical g4, bishop c5 check, king h1, and then just rook c8. You know, it's a very calm, consolidating move. What does it do? I'm not quite sure whether there's you know, a tactical basis in some of the complex tactical lines for it, because I couldn't find it. I mean, the rook on a8 is sometimes vulnerable to queen e4, but rook c8 is sometimes vulnerable to queen e6. So, you know, I wasn't quite sure. But I think the idea probably is that if this bishop moves away, the rook can then take on c4, and then after rook d2 is even stronger, because bishop takes, pawn takes will be attacking the bishop on c2. So I think it's just, there must be some, you know, some general lines like that. But I mean, I'm just astounded that you can, you know, just play some quiet moves here. I mean, I'd be looking for something dramatic, you know, anything really. But I can't stay this much material down forever. So queen e1, the same move we saw before, attacking c3, attacking e6, and also ready to come out to h4. e5, the move we saw again. Yeah, I mean, there's various ways for black. I mean, bishop e5, we've got this move rook d2 again. Queen e5, we've got rook d1 check, and rook e8 again. It's you know, very, very similar. Queen c5, we go rook e2 and rook c2, which this seemed to be quite decent. Rook g2 check and b1 was the idea. The point for the sack is that you're covering this f5 diagonal. So after rook a8 check, king h7, queen f5 check is no longer mate. And well, this is, you know, just incredibly murky still. Still lots of adventures to take place there. Stockfish played bishop g5, and then this gorgeous waiting move, king g8. The idea being that white had the idea of going bishop check, and bishop takes, and then queen h4 with check, and getting its queen into h7 very dangerously. So black just sidesteps it, plays king g8, and then doesn't give white that tempo. And now if the queen you know, moves to h4, we get ideas like rook d1 check again. They always say in shogi that running with a king early is worth 8 tempi. It's not quite that much in chess, but it does. These sort of moves do actually help. So White played the move h3. I mean, it's just a vision of the engines. They're starting to see actually that the position is quite balanced, and so they're both playing consolidating moves. This move makes sure that knight takes g4 never happens in some variations. When could knight takes g4 happen? Well, Black's going to play this move e4, which we saw before. If f takes e4, then rook d4. As you can see, this f takes e4 is quite annoying for White to have played this, because it blocks the e file for the queen, so the queen's no longer got any ways of coming in. And if White tries to get rid of this e pawn, just advance it, reopen this diagonal for the bishop, then there's this astonishing move knight e4. Bishop e4, rook takes, rook b8. And you're a whole queen down, but
that b pawn cannot be stopped.
That b pawn cannot be stopped, because if you go queen b1, I've got c2, takes, and to add insult to injury, rook b2 check, takes is a winning position for Black.
It's amazing.
It's incredible, yeah. I mean, it's just the amount of ways and variations in which, Black can be a rook down, a queen for a bishop down, or just a whole queen down, and yet still be completely fine. It's just amazing in this game. So Stockfish took on f6 here, takes and queen e4, and it looks very, very dangerous. I mean, the Black King's got no cover, and White's got this big battery on the b1 h7 diagonal, and is invading. But the key point is that Black can't win it on the light squares. Well, not after this very good move from Allie, rook c7. So
very calm.
Very calm. Queen g6. I've got rook g7 here. So just dealing with that. And the problem is, White can't win it all on the light squares. White will have to step off to the dark squares, for example, to try and win the game. But then we've got moves like rook d1 check, rook d2, and well, that's basically it. It's probably White will definitely have to hope that there's a perpetual still, because the position will be winning for Black otherwise. So after rook c7, f4, rook d2, queen g6, rook g7, queen e8, bishop f8. Black curls up into a ball like that. Yeah, I mean, it's still very good. I mean, White could play rook takes a3 now, because the bishop on f8 is pinned, but rook c2 followed by b1 queen. White's just not quick enough for that sort of thing. But White's got a different idea. Queen e6 check, rook f7, bishop g6. Again, attacking the rook on f7, but as we said before, winning more material. But as we said before, Black doesn't care. I mean, if this light squared bishop disappears, well, White's got to try and find some way to stop these pawns, and it's not going to be easy, because yeah, Black's at some stage going to put a rook on the b file and just play b2 to b1. So by now, the engines pretty much all agreed that this was a draw. They're all at 0.00 or thereabouts. So Stockfish played some... sometimes it's a bit strange. You have the feeling that when the engines see that it's just drawn, they sort of play some slightly odd moves. I mean, the human way would be just to take back that pawn on g5. What was the variation that my engines looked at? Oh yeah, c2, bishop c2, rook d6 chasing the queen away, and then rook e7 making some use of the open files and just chase the queen like that. And I think one of my engine games proceeded quite strangely. Rook e6, rook check, rook e2, rook e3 check, rook c2, king takes e3, bishop c5 check, takes, king g7, and this ending turned out to be drawn, of course, because the rook on a2 is still trapped there in the corner. So quite bizarre little ending there. But Stockfish basically saw a huge number of ways to force perpetual, so didn't worry too much about what was happening in the rest of the game. Rook check, rook d7. You could also play king g7. There are quite a few different moves. But now in this position, Stockfish decided that It had given away enough pawns. It was now time to force the draw. And this was a draw by perpetual. King h8, queen h5, queen g5. So there we are. Wow, what a game! I think I'm sure you'll agree. It was really quite amazing. And it was very, very interesting to see. How willing, as always, we've noticed this with AlphaZero games, the NNs are to to take very decisive action if they think that that the position warrants it. And this the evaluation of this position with all the little details, bishop g4, forcing f3 to blocking the bishop on g2, and then this fantastic idea b5 is really incredible. And again, but I have to say I was quite astounded by Stockfish's plan, because it would never have occurred to me in this position that you had a really great way of opening up the black kingside and getting so much counterplay there. But I mean, I have to say that it's well worth seeing this position again, because this is one of the most amazing positions I've ever seen. Positionally playing simply, the pawns on here are not ready to queen. I mean, look at all those light square pieces, but simply restricting the opponent's position, and then you just play normally on the rest of the board, with a queen less, exploiting the pressure that you've got on the queen side. Really amazing game.
Won't you have done it through calculation, like right to the end of the game or anything like that? It's more on just the positional understanding of how good those pawns are going to be.
Yeah, the shapes really, I guess you'd say, and the patterns. I mean, what we always saw with AlphaZero was that its trees sometimes tended to be very narrow, but sometimes very, very deep as well. So early moves, it just had this idea, like the NNs here. Oh yeah, I can sacrifice the queen like that. And then they just, once they've made that initial decision, they just keep on going, and they can look quite deeply into the position, but never the breadth of tactics that Stockfish is looking at, of course. So it's a lot more to do with, judgment, intuition, whatever you want to call it, than this, astonishing calculating power and that Stockfish has. But yeah, an amazing game, and really made the top of the top bonus for me. And together with this and Allie's win against Stockfish in the London system that we covered in our previous video, I think we can really. I mean, I thought during the season 18 Div P that Allie was looking really strong. And was kind of unfortunate not to make the super final. And well, it's been updated again, and I think at the moment the developers on a very rich, it's mining a very rich seam of improvements there, because it's looking really, really strong. So very exciting stuff from that.
One to watch. One
to watch. And of course, at the moment as well, there's another very exciting development. It's they call it a gauntlet. And that's Stockfish NNUE, so the Stockfish neural net evaluation plus Stockfish search engine, a real hybrid engine against all of the rest. So against the normal Stockfish and also the top 3 NNs. So that's going on at the moment.
Coming in second at the moment when I looked in this morning, but it's very, very early days, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's not an all play all. It's just this NNUE playing all of the other machines. So. I think it was all draws so far, but possibly it was better against Stoofvlees at the moment. So, well, even making all draws shows that it's pretty strong, and it's a very new development. So
it'll be funny to see how it plays against Stockfish as well.
Yeah, that was 2 draws. I haven't looked at the games yet, but I'll definitely have a look at it. But I'd really recommend looking at that from time to time, because this is kind of maybe the future. The really strong hybrid engines. Combining the best of all worlds in one engine. So there we are. And I mean, if you enjoyed this game, then don't forget to subscribe, because we desperately want to get more subscribers at the moment. So do tell your friends about it as well, about this channel if you enjoyed it. Yeah, also do take a look at our book Game Changer, which recently won the FIDE Averbach Boleslavsky Book of the Year prize. So do take a look at that. Loads of exciting games like this, fantastic engine games, neural net against alpha beta engine games. And otherwise, keep safe, keep well, and keep watching.
Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching.